In the heart of the 1960s, America was a nation in motion. The decade roared with the energy of civil rights marches, the echo of Beatles records, and the tension of the Cold War. It was an era defined by transformation, social, political, and cultural. But while these sweeping events grabbed headlines, something much smaller quietly continued its journey through the pockets and purses of millions of Americans, the humble 10-cent coin, the dime. Now, you might be wondering, how could something as ordinary as a dime tell a story worth thousands of words, or fetch a value as high as $148 in today's collector market? Well, that's exactly the kind of journey we're about to take. Because the 1967 USA 1 dime, though common on the surface, carries with it a unique story of change, economy, and hidden treasure. To understand the 1967 dime, we have to first take a step back. Prior to 1965, US dimes were made with 90% silver. That meant every dime had intrinsic value, not just as currency, but as precious metal. But as silver prices climbed in the early 1960s, something unexpected happened. Americans started hoarding their coins. Not for sentimental reasons, but for profit. People realized that the melt value of the coins was often higher than their face value. That spelled trouble. The government responded swiftly. In 1965, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed into law the Coinage Act of 1965, which eliminated silver from dimes and quarters. From that year forward, these coins would be composed of a copper-nickel clad, essentially a copper core sandwiched between layers of nickel. It was the end of an era and the beginning of a new one. So, the 1967 dime was born in a time of transition, when metal composition changed, mint marks vanished, and the government scrambled to stabilize a fragile currency system. It emerged not as a glittering silver coin but as a modern, practical piece of change, designed to be spent and forgotten. And yet, not all 1967 dimes were created equal. Though the design remained unchanged, the 1967 coin differed from its predecessors not only in its metal content but in its mintage scale. In that year alone, the U.S. Mint produced over 2.2 billion dimes, an astronomical number designed to combat hoarding and meet the country's economic demands. Of those, the vast majority were struck in Philadelphia, though again, there's no mint mark to distinguish them. One of the most fascinating aspects of coin collecting is the role that mint errors play in value. A perfectly ordinary dime from 1967 might still only be worth 10 cents today, but one with an error? That's a different story. Collectors prize error coins for their rarity, their oddities, and their accidental uniqueness. Some 1967 dimes were struck off-center. Others were double-struck, meaning the coin was hit more than once, leaving ghostly impressions of the design. In some rare cases, dimes were struck on the wrong planchets entirely, such as on blanks meant for pennies or foreign coins. These are the kind of accidents that weren't caught in time, and because the mint was producing at such high volumes, a few slipped through the cracks. Many 1967 SMS dimes are known for their exceptional quality. Some display deep cameo contrast, where the raised design is frosted and the background is mirror-like. These coins, when graded by professionals, can command significantly higher prices. But again, condition is everything. So how does a dime from 1967, a coin that billions of Americans once casually dropped into soda machines or used for payphone calls, reach a value as high as $148? The answer lies in rarity and condition. A 1967 dime graded MS-67 or higher is exceptionally rare, especially considering how many were produced in a rush. Finding one in this condition is like spotting a perfectly preserved leaf in a forest after a storm. It stands out, it catches attention, and collectors want it. And then there's the matter of demand. As collectors seek to complete date sets, having one example of every Roosevelt dime ever made, they often look for the best specimen they can find for each year. That pushes up the value of high-grade coins, even if the year itself wasn't considered rare. Add to that the intrigue of the SMS coins, the occasional error pieces, and the nostalgia factor, and you start to see how this 10-cent piece has carved out a niche for itself. But perhaps the most compelling aspect of the 1967 dime's value is the reminder it gives us that history isn't just found in museums or textbooks. It's in our pockets. It jingles in forgotten drawers. It sits in old coin jars, waiting for someone to notice. Of course, not every coin is going to be a treasure. But that's the beauty of it. Because among the ordinary, there's always a chance for something extraordinary. And now, for the moment you've been waiting for, how much is this coin actually worth? Well, a circulated 1967 dime is generally worth just its face value, 10 cents. But a high-grade example? That's another story. An MS-67 graded 1967 Roosevelt dime has sold for as much as $148 at auction. That's 1,480 times its original value. Think about that, a coin meant to be spent on candy or bus fare now fetching nearly $150. It's a testament to the power of preservation, attention to detail, and a little bit of luck. Let's go back in time for a moment. Picture the United States in the early 2000s. Gas was just over $1, and people still used pocket change regularly. In this setting, millions of coins passed hands every day. Most of them went unnoticed, mere tools of daily transactions. But hidden among the ordinary were a few that held secrets, stories, and unexpected value. One of those is the 2002 Roosevelt dime, specifically the one minted in Denver, marked by the little D just to the left of the torch on the reverse side. At first glance, it seems like any other dime. But as collectors and enthusiasts have discovered, this little coin is more than just 10 cents. In some cases, it's worth up to $158 today. Now, that's the hook, right? A 10-cent coin worth over 100 times its face value? But before we get to how that happened and what makes this particular dime so valuable, let's take a journey through its origin. Because the Roosevelt dime wasn't always around. In fact, the dime's design has gone through several major changes over the years, each reflecting a slice of American history. And the Roosevelt dime, introduced in 1946, carries a legacy as deep as the man whose face is on it. Franklin D. Roosevelt, the 32nd President of the United States, led the country through the Great Depression and most of World War II. He wasn't just a political figure, he was a symbol of perseverance, hope, and resilience. Stricken with polio at age 39, Roosevelt never let his condition define his legacy. In fact, it was his battle with the disease that led to one of the most enduring symbols in coinage history. When he passed away in April 1945, the nation mourned. But out of that mourning came a movement to honor him. And what better way than to put his face on a coin that people would use daily? The dime was chosen in part because of Roosevelt's strong support for the March of Dimes, a campaign aimed at fighting polio. So in 1946, just a year after his death, the Roosevelt dime was born. Fast forward to 2002. It was a relatively quiet year in the world of coinage. No major overhauls, no new commemorative programs for the dime. The U.S. Mint was simply continuing the legacy, producing coins to meet the demand of circulation. That year, the Denver Mint struck 1.06 billion Roosevelt dimes. Yes, billion, with a B. That kind of number makes it seem like there's no way a 2002 D dime could be special. But here's where it gets interesting. In any large mintage, there are always anomalies, coins that stand out because of small imperfections, minting errors, or condition. And for collectors, those anomalies are gold. Imagine you're a collector, browsing through rolls of dimes, maybe from a bank or a coin show. You're looking for something specific, sharp details, flawless surfaces, and no signs of wear. Then you spot it. A 2002 D Roosevelt dime with incredible luster, not a scratch or nick in sight. You send it off for grading, heart pounding a little. Weeks later, it comes back, MS-68, full bands. Suddenly, that dime isn't worth 10 cents. It's worth over $100, possibly even more if demand is high. That's where the $158 figure comes in. Sales records show that certain specimens of the 2002 D Roosevelt dime, in exceptionally high grades, have sold for that much at auction. And for collectors, that's not just a win, it's a treasure hunt victory. It's worth mentioning that coin collecting, while thrilling, isn't always about hitting the jackpot. Yes, finding a $158 dime is exciting. But the real joy comes from learning, building a collection, and appreciating history in the palm of your hand. Each coin is a snapshot of its time, its economy, its technology, even its politics. The 2002 D dime might not scream history like a Civil War-era coin, but it's part of a living history. A piece of a time not too far behind us, yet already full of nostalgia, and if you're thinking about starting a coin collection, there's no better way than to begin with pocket change. Seriously. Grab a jar, start looking. You'll be surprised at what you can find. State quarters, wheat pennies, buffalo nickels, they're still out there. And yes, maybe even a 2002 D Roosevelt dime that's worth far more than 10 cents. So the next time you get change from a vending machine, or pay cash at a store and get coins back, take a closer look. You might be holding a treasure and not even know it. The 2002 D Roosevelt dime is a perfect example of how the ordinary can become extraordinary. How something designed to be spent can become something to be saved, studied, and celebrated, and here's the part you've been waiting for. In recent auctions and private sales, some of these 2002 D Roosevelt dimes, graded MS-68 with full bands, have sold for as much as $158. That's right. From 10 cents to $158. Not because they're old, not because they're made of precious metal, but because they're rare in that grade, they're desired by collectors, and they represent a perfect example of their type. A dime can carry history, art, and unexpected worth. So check your change. Look closely. Who knows? Maybe your next trip to the coffee shop or grocery store could come with a little surprise. A 2002 D Roosevelt dime that's more than just spare change, it's a collector's dream, and if you do find one, let us know. Drop a comment, share your story. That's what makes this hobby special. It's not just about coins. It's about connection, curiosity, and the thrill of discovery. Thanks for watching, and as always, happy collecting.